Hey y'all, Cannon here with Free Tours by Foot DC, and I am in a neighborhood called Adams Morgan. It's a popular place for tourists to stay at. It's a popular place for locals to hang out at. I wanted to walk around and tell you a little bit more about what you can see and do here, and a lot about the hidden history. So a lot of visitors to Washington, D.C. stay up in this Northwest D.C. area, which I highly recommend because you're going to find central D.C., downtown, the business district. There's not a lot of things open at night. But Adams Morgan here, this is a neighborhood where people live, so you're going to find restaurants and nightlife. They have karaoke and Ethiopian jazz, coffee shops, great places for brunch. Now, I talk a lot about the nightlife here. I'm obviously not here at night. It's like noon. I would not subject you to what I do here at night, which is the karaoke bar, and there does not need to be any video evidence of my escapades there. So I just thought I'd take you guys around on the neighborhood to see a little bit more about it so you can know what to do next time that you are here in Adams Morgan. So let's get going. Adams Morgan, which is nicknamed ADMO for short, is an area that prides itself today for being an anti-suburb. It's diverse and ethnic and an integral part of the city, but it actually started as a suburb. It's gone from rich to poor to rich again. In the 1800s, rich Washingtonians moved from city center uphill to here to get the fresh air. In the eastern part of ADMO, where we end the tour, there was even a movement to move the White House there for the president's health and the health of his family. Because if his family were to get ill, he would undoubtedly become distracted. Technically, what we call Adams Morgan today is 4 different neighborhoods: Washington Heights, the Calorama Triangle, Lanier Heights, and Reed Cook. And it was originally known by the various names, or I mean even as separate neighborhoods. But when the new boundaries were laid out, this neighborhood covered bits of those 4 neighborhoods. And so a new name was developed for the community. There's a helicopter coming. I hear it, I do not see it. So when the new boundaries were laid out for Adams Morgan, they kind of had incorporated little bits of all those 4 neighborhoods I listed earlier. And so they needed to come up with a new name. And the Adams Morgan Community Council, which was when the 2 schools, the 2 local schools were desegregated in 1955. So Adams Morgan is named after the 2 schools, John Quincy Adams, which was reserved as the local white school, and Thomas P. Morgan, which was an older school that was reserved as the local school for black children. So this is the John Quincy Adams School, one of the schools that lends its name to the name of the neighborhood. So the Morgan School for Adams Morgan, the Morgan School is no longer standing. So the main outcome of the community organization that was founded after the desegregation was the Mary Read Elementary School. This was not a school, but also a recreational facility and community center. So the Adams School here was built in the 1930s. And after the Reed Elementary School was built to serve all the neighborhood children, this became the Americanization School for immigrant adults. So Adams Morgan was, and is still today, the destination of many newly arrived immigrants moving to the city. We are going to make our way over to 18th Street. If there was a main high street in Adams Morgan, it is going to be 18th Street, which is just a block east of us. I'm out here on a Tuesday, I don't know, a weekday afternoon in early August of 2021. It's a nice day out today, so we'll still have people out and about, but Adams Morgan tends to be more popular on like Sunday brunch time and evenings. But I'll still be able to show you some of my recommended things to do if you make your way here. do as I say and not as I do, because I'm just gonna cross the street now. So this is 18th Street. It's kind of the main thoroughfare of Adams Morgan and DC nightlife. So today Adams Morgan has a certain demographic. It has an abundance of bars and nightlife, entertainment. It's really close to the universities here, so it's a popular place to hang out for local college kids and congressional staffers who want to pretend they're still in college. So it does have kind of a distinct nightlife reputation, but some of its more famous bars and late night eats will be here on 18th Street. So most famous is Amsterdam falafel. So some of the food places here cater to the nightlife, so they're not necessarily sit-down restaurants. You're gonna find quick bites to eat to go, probably best eaten after you have imbibed some. Jumbo Slice Pizza has that reputation. Very large pieces of pizza, very greasy, perfect after a couple of beers. Not maybe a place to stop for lunch on a hot day. You really want to come out in the evening after you've been hanging out at the bars for a while. Amsterdam falafel is also here on 18th Street, and it's probably more of its well-known quick bites to eat here. So being that we are at the top, or we're uphill, I mentioned earlier the wealthy Washingtonians moved from downtown DC up here for the fresh air. So being at the top of the hill, you can see the Washington Monument from up here. Only the top of it, just pointing out there from atop the buildings. So here's the Mary H. Reed Community Center elementary school that I had mentioned earlier. Another fun thing to look for around Adams Morgan is the street art. So on that corner building, you can see a sculpture of a person hanging out the top floor window trying to grab the cat, who is also hanging out the window. You're also going to have a lot more kind of diversity in your restaurant choices up here in Adams Morgan on 18th Street. You'll see a lot of variety. You're not going to see a lot of the same types of cuisine. So because it is the main drag of Adams Morgan and lots of restaurants, you're going to see that 18th Street today is actually partially closed to traffic and to parking, and they brought out a lot of the streeteries. This is being filmed in August of 2021. Surely I don't need to explain why we all want to eat outside. So here's Musette Karaoke Bar. It's a Korean restaurant and Korean style karaoke. That's where like you and your friends rent a room and you don't have to sing in front of a whole bunch of strangers. Highly recommend it. We go from Korean to tacos, vegetarian, to a bar. A League of Her Own. If you want to know more about League of Her Own, I highly recommend checking out Toho, A Tour of Her Own. Good friends of ours, tour company that focuses on women's history here in Washington, D.C. We partner with them for a lot of things. Now, if I were walking down on a Sunday evening or or Sunday brunch time or like a Friday night, lots more people hanging out, you'd be a lot more lively up here, but it's one of the reasons I didn't want to walk through all of those crowds. Here's Jumbo Slice. Again, no reason for it to be open for lunch. Definitely something to check out in the evening. Late night, after you've been drinking. Now, Adams Morgan has a reputation for its nightlife, and there is a lot to do here for adults. But it's still very family friendly. I come down here with my kids frequently for restaurants, especially if they have live music on the outside patio. Some street art for you to check out. This is by a very famous muralist here in Washington, D.C. If you want to know more about him and his work, we actually have 2 street art tours, U Street and Georgetown, which we will make videos of at some point. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you'll know then when we post these, all about street art in Washington, D.C. Here's Amsterdam falafel. Winner, best falafel. Highly recommend it. I know at some point we might do a street art tour of Adams Morgan. You can come check us out in person if you are in Washington, D.C. visiting us, or if you live here and want to learn a little bit more about your history here in the neighborhood. The real original Jumbo Slice pizza. So Pizza Mart is actually the original Jumbo Slice pizza. I mean, if you are craving some large greasy pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning, either of them are gonna work. But if you want the historically accurate one, so I'm coming up to a purple building with a mural that is being obscured by this tree. Let me see if I can get a better view of it for you. So this is a place called Madam's Organ. It is a fun play on words. Adams Morgan, Madam's Organ. It's a blues club. Many people have eaten in this kitchen and gone on to lead normal, healthy lives. I'm reading a sign. I'm not just saying that. So this is a pretty awesome blues club. What used to be here, however, was a little store called Children's Supermart. There are basically no remnants of this being a children's furniture store, other than the fact that I assure you that it was. So it started out selling baby furniture, but then the customers, as the kids got older, they wanted baby toys, and then toys for older kids. And in 1957, the store here, Children's Supermart, started to focus on toys instead of children's furniture. Can you name a famous toy store? That's right, so this is the original Toys R Us. So I'm gonna go back around to get a better view of the mural on the side of the building. It was commissioned as artwork, but it contains the name of the establishment, so the city referred to it as a sign. If I can back up without falling over. So you can see it says Madam's Organ there on the corner, just above the word Tryst. And since it is an artwork that contains the name of the establishment, the city says that it's advertisement, not public art, and they told the owners that they had to take it down, and the owner refused and is paying a fine. So next door to Adams Morgan is Tryst Coffee Shop, great local place for coffee. And then also next to it is Bassa. You're gonna find some great Ethiopian jazz performed here. Lost City Books. If you are looking for a great book on Washington, D.C. history, may I shamelessly plug my own books. I'm the only Camden on Amazon or on any of the local bookstores, and I write about Georgetown and women's history. And coming up this fall of 2021, you can also learn about women's history with our tour guide Becca Grawl, who has also worked on a book with Toho, Caitlin Caligara, of A Tour of Her Own. So you can get all the women's history that you could possibly desire, written by DC by Foot tour guides. So across the street is kind of a vacant lot, that open plaza there. This was the Knickerbocker Theatre. It was a state-of-the-art movie theater in 1915. So the building had a curved 3-story facade of limestone on red brick. So it was a Georgian revival, and they sat 1,700 people. In 1922, the theater was filled with people watching Get Rich Quick Wallingford. It was a snowy winter, a snowy night that day, and the roof it was flat. And so on the top of the roof, snow kept piling on and on and on, so much so that the roof collapsed, killing 98 people and injuring 133. To the date, this is still the largest snowstorm in DC history. It was 27 inches, and it's called the Knickerbocker Storm because of what happened here at the Knickerbocker Theatre. Oh, how did I miss Shenanigans Irish Pub? You can see the shamrocks and the leprechauns there. I've actually never been in, but it's really hard to miss that as you walk by. So after the Knickerbocker disaster, a year later, a new theater was built here. It used the facade of the Knickerbocker Theatre, so just the outside, since the interior had collapsed. So for about 6 months, it was a dance hall. The original name was the Psychedelic Light and Electric Company, and it was run by 3 men who wanted to bring a taste of San Francisco to Washington, D.C. They were originally located on K Street, which is more financial district, and they were denied permits to open there. So when word got out that they wanted to come here to the corner of 18th and Columbia and Adams Morgan, the residents here banded together out of a fear of drugs and long hair and loud music. So the residents succeeded in postponing the opening, which meant that the Grateful Dead, who were booked to play here, never actually got a chance to play here. But a little known group at the time did actually play here one night at the Ambassador Theater. But a little known group did play here one night. You may have heard of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. In October of 1967, the night before the March on the Pentagon, an anti-war rally was held here as well at the theater with Norman Mailer and Robert Lowell. So the Ambassador Theater was located here for a while. but most people preferred television at home, and it was forced to close. What they're going to do here at this corner is still a constant source of debate here in Adams Morgan. It's nice to have a couple open plazas for the farmers markets, though. So this is the corner of 18th and Columbia. See the main corner, main intersection of the neighborhood. We're gonna make our way a little further down Columbia. Tell where the music is coming from. So we're gonna walk by, I think there's some live music in the square across the park, and a group photo on the steps of the Line Hotel. So you're probably all looking at the mural of the cows, but also check out the sculpture of an older woman sitting on top of the City Bikes building here. So I love this little block of Adams Morgan because you get a sense of how this is a city neighborhood. It's not what you normally picture with Washington, D.C., but this is the real D.C. So this is Columbia Avenue. I'm sorry. So this is Columbia Road. In the 1940s, this area was kind of like Little Park Avenue. There were furs by Gutenhaus, hand-cranked ice cream at Bud's. There was a French pastry shop called Avignon Frères, and that is where President Truman and Eisenhower used to have tea, but not together. The pastry shop that made the cake for the Kennedy inauguration, and the famous Watergate cake, which was a delicious cake in the shape of the hotel for its grand opening. Here comes that helicopter again. So the Watergate cake was for the grand opening of the Watergate Hotel, and the cake was in the shape of the hotel. So Avignon Frères was here on Columbia Road too. So the area changed during World War II. More people moved out of the city. Buildings got older, they got less expensive, and the area became more diverse. After the riots in 1968, so many people fled the city and the area, which opened the way for even more immigrants to come to this neighborhood looking for less expensive housing. So this really led to the diverse nature that Adams Morgan has today. Most of the immigrants here come from El Salvador, Guatemala, other South American countries, and it has a distinct Latino flavor, especially as you keep walking down Columbia Road. So the festival parade and fiesta, which is, you know, Latino festivals in the area, they bring the various cultures of those countries to the neighborhood. Even today, so from, you know, 2010 to 2021 here today, it's changing characters again, and a lot of the residents who have lived here for decades are also being forced out again because of gentrification and the increasing housing and rent here in Adams Morgan. So we're coming up to the corner of Columbia and 17th Street. And you might notice the awning here says Ontario. I'm gonna go around the corner and tell you more about it. It's a pet hospital today, but they've kept the original. get a little further away from the sirens.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, sweetheart.
So this is just a pet hospital today, but it was the Ontario Theatre. You can see the original Ontario Theatre signage here. The building was threatened with demolition a couple years ago, but they have saved it. It cost $600,000 to build, and it could hold 1,400 people with one single screen and rocking chair seats, which I definitely think that we should bring back. There's also a separate room here called the Cry Room, whether that was for babies crying or women after an emotional film. There's a party room for birthday parties, and in the foyer was a chandelier from the Paramount Theater in New York City. The theater, or the chandelier, still exists. It's just, as far as I know, it's still in storage. The longest running film here was The Sound of Music. It ran here for 92 weeks. Bobby Kennedy, Attorney General, JFK's younger brother, RFK, he visited, he watched a movie here. So after its heyday as a movie theater, it became, it still remained a theater, but it was a Spanish language theater to fit in with the demographics of Columbia Road. Then it was a B horror film theater, and it became a movie theater again. And now it's a pet hospital. So in 1970s, it was a concert hall. The Clash played here, the Police played here. A little known band had the crowd on its feet, and its lead singer was dancing on stage. So that was Bono, and U2 had one of their earliest concerts here at the Ontario Theatre. So that concert is in the 1970s, and I still have a YouTube album on my playlist, so they're still going strong. So we're heading back into the residential part of the neighborhood, maybe a little bit quieter from that busy main street. Oh, this plaque is new. Built in 1951. First run movie house. Premieres of Lawrence of Arabia and Sound of Music. And then, ooh, a Blondie. I did not list Blondie. Everything else I already told you. So I had a guest on a tour the other day, a tour of downtown, Lincoln's assassination, and he asked, where do people live? Because he hadn't really seen any neighborhoods. So you just need to venture out away from the National Mall and the federal core of downtown DC, really not that far. And you can find homes and schools and grocery stores, regular city life, neighborhoods. Look at that. Entire building's up for sale. I imagine these are a flipped building. Condos. So we're actually going to talk about a grocery store in just a minute. Our next stop is a Harris Teeter today. So this building here, start to see the neon letters for Harris Teeter at the top. It is just a grocery store today, but this little unassuming business has some pretty cool history. So this building was actually built as the National Guard Armory, and there isn't much you can do with the type of building because it has no windows and it's just thick walls. So after World War II, we didn't need an armory here, and it became a roller rink and a roller derby, a boxing arena, a wrestling arena, a bowling alley. Actually, during its time as a boxing arena, there was an 11-year-old boy who fought here. His name was Ray Leonard. We know him more as Sugar Ray Leonard. This was a movie studio for a while. Peggy Sue and Pelican Brief were shot here. If you saw a whole long time ago the MTV Q&A with Bill Clinton, where he was asked if he wears boxers or briefs, that happened here. It was a concert hall, a go-go club. Guar has played here. It was abandoned for many years before it became a grocery store. This is what it is now. So it is on the corner of 17th and Kalorama Road Northwest. So Kalorama, which means beautiful view, it's actually a name for an estate a couple blocks from here. Maybe more than a couple blocks from here. But Kalorama Road around here, this area was zoned as quote unquote colored. Helicopter's back. So this area, this area was zoned as quote unquote colored, meaning that there was no requirements for foundations for the buildings. So this is where the servants of the nearby mansions lived. As the city grew and the neighborhood gentrified, this all changed. So John F. Kennedy lived down the street at the Dorchester in 1941 with his sister Kathleen when he was in the Navy. Kathleen was the fourth child, second daughter of the Kennedys. She married into British royalty. Unlike the Kennedy, the British royalty they're not Catholic, and only one of her brothers attended the wedding in 1944. Her husband was killed a few months later in World War II, and then she was actually killed in a plane crash in 1948. Only her father attended the funeral. Her mother was still mad that she married a Protestant. Walking up 17th Street. If you are interested more about redlining and the gentrification of these neighborhoods, I'm going to put some resources in the not show notes. No, I totally forgot. In the description, I'll put some more resources in the description about covenants and redlining and gentrification here in Washington, D.C. It's so much quieter here. We're going to cross the street. So a block down the street was an area zoned colored, and a block up the street, this was and still is more of the wealthy and thus for the longest time not diverse area of Adams Morgan. So you can't see it because I am not tall enough, and I don't think my GoPro stick will reach as high to look over the walls here, but there is a building, there's a house on the other side of this wall. I think we'll get to a view of it in a minute. And here we go. So this is the Meridian house. It was built in 1920 by John Russell Pope. He is also the man who designed the Jefferson Building. It was built for Ambassador Irwin Bowe Laughlin. I want to tell you about the house next to it. These houses here are very reminiscent of Embassy Row, which is not far from here. This house here, I'm not gonna walk up the driveway. That seems rude. Better view up here at the gates. So this house was built by Henry White. He was a retired diplomat, a signer of the Treaty of Versailles. So this is a 40-room house built in 1912, also designed by John Russell Pope of the Jefferson Memorial and the house we just saw. In 1934, Eugene Meyer, publisher of the Washington Post, purchased the house. It has seen the lights of Adlai Stevenson, Eleanor Roosevelt, and many of the Kennedys, President Johnson, and President Harding. So we're going to keep walking along the very large brick wall. And we're making our way over to 16th Street. We are very far north, but if we were to turn right on 16th Street, it dead ends at Black Lives Matter Plaza and the White House. So we're pretty much at the far east reaches of Adams Morgan, and very much a different feel in the neighborhood from the very diverse and kind of regular folks' houses and restaurants that we see at Columbia and 18th Street. And then we're making our way to 16th Street with these massive mansions and a lot of very wealthy history. It's a parking lot. Both of the houses that we just saw are part of the Meridian Center today. So this is Meridian Park. It is known for drum circles on Sunday afternoons. A drum circle has been taking place since the 1950s. Meridian Hill was originally the site of a mansion in the early 1800s. Then it became a park. During the Civil War, it was an encampment for Civil War or for Union soldiers. And after the war, Columbian College was located here. This was the predecessor for George Washington University, which is now located in the Foggy Bottom area of DC. So the college left, and people in the neighborhood here started to lobby for it to be a park. So I'm not gonna walk into the park today. Maybe I'll do that on a shorter separate video. Subscribe to our channel if you want to see that. But inside is a cascading waterfall and a statue of Joan of Arc, a presidential memorial that nobody remembers to James Buchanan, who, fun fact, first president to wear blue jeans in the Oval Office. If you want to know more about Meridian Hill Park, Malcolm X Park, or the statue of Joan of Arc, You can listen to our podcast, Tour Guide Tell All. We have episodes about both of them. I will link them in the description below. Continuing down 16th Street, the intersection ahead is Florida Avenue today. It would have been called Boundary Road originally, marking the separation between Washington City and Washington County. But I'm walking along this, they're not bricks, this stone wall here. The wall here is the only remaining part of Henderson Castle that was located at this corner. If you look off into the distance, you can see the Washington Monument again, almost straight ahead down 16th Street. So Mary Foote Henderson was a senator's wife. She lived in this neighborhood, and she thought that this intersection, 16th Street, which dead ends at the White House, and Boundary Road, was kind of like the key artery of Washington, D.C. And you know, she was not wrong. So because we are on the north side of Boundary Road, that is why Adams Morgan was technically a suburb. We are outside of the city, original city limits. So Mary Foote Henderson knew that important buildings were making their way up here. Eventually 16th Street here, it became known as the Avenue of the Presidents. There were enormous busts of all the presidents lining the roads. No one ever called it that. And I mean, it was only officially named Avenue of the Presidents for like a year and a half. So Mary Foote Henderson thought the White House was too small, and as I said before, downhill, kind of in city center. So she thought a new White House should be built. She thought the White House should be built up here. The Lincoln Memorial was almost built up here. The Vice President's house was here for a while. US 0 Mile. There is a stone over by the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Pier Stone, which marks the US 0 Mile. And the US 0 Mile continues up 16th Street, which is why this park here, this hill here, is called Meridian Hill, Meridian Park. Think Prime Meridian, but just our own version. This street, 16th Street, has the French, Polish, Lithuanian, Cuban, Swiss embassies. The Guatemalan, Mexican, El Salvadorian embassies were here due to the large number of population in the area. So I say Cuban/Swiss embassies. The Swiss embassy is here, and it has the Cuban interest section. It has a Hemingway daiquiri bar, but that is invite only. And if anybody is watching this that can get me an invite, please let me know. Sounds cool. So on the northwest corner here was Henderson Castle. You can kind of see the turrets and the balustrades, is that what they're called? It looks like a castle on the wall here. The actual building, the house that she lived in, this is not it. These are all new builds, but it was at this location. So the wall's the only thing that's left. This was Mary Foote Henderson's home. She tried to make the neighborhood great from here. She abandoned that effort, and this area actually became the site of raves and loud music, and she would have hated it. The owners of the houses behind complained about all of the raves and parties, and so the Henderson Castle was demolished. She is also a fascinating woman. And one of my favorite little snippet stories about her, she was very into prohibition, wanted to get rid of all of the alcohol that her husband had in his wine cellar. So one day she comes out here and breaks all of the bottles. So wine is just flowing down the gutters, down the hill of 16th Street. And everyone else in the neighborhood is totally fine with wine. So they came out here with spoons and aluminum cans trying to scoop up all of the very expensive and nice wine that was flowing down the gutters of 16th Street. So these are just some of the highlights of Adams Morgan. If you are interested in learning about more neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., make sure you subscribe to our channel. Share this video with anyone coming to Adams Morgan so they know what to do. Until next time.